In this chilling case, Brandon Council was sentenced to death for his heinous crimes. A bank robbery that turned deadly and resulted in the cold-blooded murders of 2 women. This video delves into the events leading up to the crime, the courtroom drama, and the ultimate verdict that captured nationwide attention. Join us as we unravel the story of a tragic loss, a community's grief, and the justice system's response. On a seemingly ordinary August day in 2017, the small town of Conway, South Carolina, became the stage for an unimaginable tragedy that would leave the community forever scarred. Crestcom Bank, a local institution, opened its doors like any other day, serving residents who had come to rely on its familiar faces and warm atmosphere. Among those working at the bank that day were Donna Major and Katie Skeen, 2 women known for their kindness, dedication, and vibrant personalities. They were more than just employees. They were pillars of their community. As the day progressed, no one could have predicted the darkness that was about to descend. Brandon Council, a man with a troubled past and a criminal history, entered the bank with a plan fueled by desperation and malice. What unfolded next was a scene of terror and heartbreak that would haunt the memories of those involved for years to come. Council entered Crestcom Bank shortly after noon, pretending to be an ordinary customer. Surveillance footage later revealed him pacing nervously, his hands in his pockets, and his eyes scanning the room as if calculating his next move. But what started as a facade of normalcy quickly spiraled into chaos. Drawing a firearm, Council demanded money from the employees, his voice raised and his demeanor threatening. The bank employees, including Donna and Katie, complied with his demands, hoping to avoid escalation. But Brandon Council was not satisfied with merely robbing the bank. In a senseless act of violence, Council turned his weapon on Donna Major and Katie Skeen, shooting them both at close range. The reasons behind this horrific decision remain elusive, but the impact was devastating. Donna and Katie were beloved by their families, friends, and colleagues. Their loss was not just a blow to their loved ones, but to the entire Conway community. Witnesses and surviving employees described the scene as chaotic and surreal, a nightmare unfolding in real time. Customers and staff alike were left in shock, some hiding under desks, others frozen in fear as the sound of gunshots echoed through the bank. The lives of Donna and Katie were cut short in a moment of unimaginable cruelty, leaving behind grieving families and unanswered questions. Council fled the scene with stolen cash, but the weight of his actions would follow him. Law enforcement quickly responded, sealing off the area and launching a manhunt to apprehend the perpetrator. For the community, the immediate aftermath was a mix of sorrow and anger. Vigils were held, flowers were left outside the bank, and the town united in mourning the loss of 2 cherished women. The crime was not just a robbery gone wrong. It was a deliberate act of malice that left an indelible mark on the hearts of everyone who heard the story. Donna Major was remembered as a loving mother and grandmother, known for her kindness and unwavering faith. Katie Skeen was a young, vibrant woman with a bright future ahead of her, deeply loved by her family and friends. The tragedy of that day raised questions that would echo throughout the subsequent investigation and trial. What drove Brandon Council to commit such an unthinkable act? How could such violence erupt in a peaceful community like Conway? These questions would linger as the legal system worked to bring justice for Donna, Katie, and their grieving families. In the days following the crime, the town of Conway struggled to come to terms with the loss. News outlets covered the story extensively, bringing national attention to a crime that felt deeply personal to those in the community. The tragedy at Crestcom Bank was not just about the loss of 2 lives. It was a stark reminder of how senseless violence could shatter the peace of even the most close-knit towns. For the people of Conway, the memory of that fateful day would remain etched in their hearts, a somber chapter in the town's history that underscored the fragility of life and the enduring impact of loss. The aftermath of the Crestcom Bank murders set into motion a massive and intense manhunt for Brandon Council. Law enforcement agencies, faced with the gravity of his crimes, mobilized every available resource to locate and apprehend him before he could inflict further harm. The chilling details of the bank robbery and murders quickly spread across South Carolina and beyond, making Council one of the most wanted fugitives in the nation. investigators began piecing together the events that had unfolded. Surveillance footage from the bank provided a clear and haunting record of Counsel's actions, showing his movements, demeanor, and the calculated nature of his crime. The footage also confirmed his identity, giving law enforcement a crucial lead. Witness testimonies from bank employees and customers who survived the attack added more details to the investigation, painting a picture of a man driven by desperation but capable of extreme brutality. Brandon Counsel was no stranger to the justice system. He had a history of criminal behavior, including theft and fraud, but nothing in his past had suggested he was capable of the kind of violence displayed at Crestcom Bank. Investigators delved into his background, uncovering a pattern of financial struggles and a life marked by instability. They discovered that Counsel had recently been evicted and was living out of his car at the time of the crime. While these factors provided context, they in no way justified his actions, leaving investigators and the public grappling with the senselessness of the murders. The manhunt for Counsel spanned multiple states. Police departments, the FBI, and the U.S. Marshals Service collaborated, using every tool at their disposal. Alerts were issued to the public, with Counsel's face plastered on wanted posters and featured on news broadcasts. Law enforcement agencies urged citizens to come forward with any information, emphasizing the urgency of capturing a dangerous individual who had already shown a willingness to kill. As days passed, tension mounted. For the families of Donna Major and Katie Skeen, the wait for justice was agonizing. The community of Conway, still reeling from the tragedy, rallied together to support the grieving families while hoping for Counsel's swift capture. The fear of an armed and dangerous man at large added to the community's anxiety, and the pressure on law enforcement to deliver results grew with each passing hour. The break in the case came a few days later in North Carolina. Counsel had been spotted at a motel where he had checked in under a false name. A vigilant motel employee recognized him from the news and immediately contacted authorities. Acting quickly, law enforcement surrounded the area and apprehended Counsel without incident. His arrest brought a collective sigh of relief to those who had been following the case, though the pain of the tragedy remained. In his possession, investigators found items linking him to the Crestcom Bank robbery, including stolen cash and personal belongings. Counsel reportedly offered little resistance during his arrest, and his demeanor was described as calm and detached, a stark contrast to the violence he had unleashed just days earlier. His capture marked the end of a multi-state manhunt, but for the families of the victims and the community of Conway, it was only the beginning of a long journey toward justice. Following his arrest, Counsel was transported back to South Carolina to face charges. Law enforcement officials held a press conference, detailing the efforts that had led to his capture and expressing their commitment to securing justice for the victims. The sense of relief was palpable, but it was tempered by the weight of the loss that had brought them to this point. The investigation into Counsel's actions continued even after his arrest. Authorities sought to build an airtight case, combing through forensic evidence, witness accounts, and Counsel's own statements. They aimed not only to hold him accountable, but also to provide some measure of closure to the families of Donna Major and Katie Skeen. Every detail of the crime and its aftermath was scrutinized, ensuring that no stone was left unturned. The manhunt for Brandon Counsel demonstrated the power of community vigilance and the dedication of law enforcement. It also highlighted the profound impact of a single act of violence, rippling out to affect countless lives. While his capture brought some solace, the journey to justice was far from over, and the emotional wounds inflicted by his crimes would take much longer to heal. The trial of Brandon Counsel was one of the most closely watched criminal cases in South Carolina's recent history, drawing intense public scrutiny and media coverage. For the families of Donna Major and Katie Skeen, as well as the Conway community, the courtroom became a space where grief, anger, and a desire for justice converged. Counsel faced multiple charges, including armed robbery resulting in death and the murder of 2 innocent women. These charges carried the possibility of the death penalty, a prospect that divided public opinion but underscored the gravity of his crimes. From the outset, prosecutors made it clear they would seek the harshest punishment available, arguing that the nature of the murders demanded nothing less. As the trial began, the courtroom was filled with emotion. Family members of the victims attended in support of Donna and Katie, many clutching photographs or mementos of their loved ones. Their presence served as a poignant reminder of the human cost of counsel's actions. Meanwhile, members of the media packed the gallery, eager to capture every moment of the proceedings. The prosecution's case was built on a mountain of evidence, much of it irrefutable. Surveillance footage from Crestcom Bank provided a damning visual record of the crime, showing counsel's movements in the horrific moments when he turned his weapon on Donna and Katie. The video was played in court, and the emotional weight of seeing those events unfold again was overwhelming. Family members wept openly, and even seasoned legal professionals admitted to being shaken by the footage. In addition to the video evidence, prosecutors presented forensic findings that linked counsel to the crime. Ballistics analysis confirmed that the bullets fired matched the weapon found in counsel's possession at the time of his arrest. Fingerprints and DNA evidence further tied him to the scene, leaving little room for doubt about his culpability. The prosecution also called witnesses to testify, including bank employees and customers who had survived the attack. Their testimonies painted a vivid and harrowing picture of the chaos and terror inside the bank that day. One employee described how Donna and Katie had tried to remain calm and professional, even as counsel's demands became more aggressive. Another witness recalled the deafening sound of gunfire and the sight of the two women collapsing to the floor. These accounts reinforced the prosecution's argument that counsel's actions were not only premeditated, but also extraordinarily cruel. In a surprising move, counsel chose to plead guilty to the charges, effectively conceding his responsibility for the crimes. However, this plea did not preclude a sentencing trial, as the prosecution still sought the death penalty. During this phase, counsel's defense team focused on presenting mitigating factors that they hoped would persuade the jury to opt for a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than execution. The defense argued that counsel had endured a difficult and unstable upbringing, marked by poverty, neglect, and exposure to violence. They also pointed to his mental health struggles, suggesting that these issues may have contributed to his actions. To bolster their case, they called psychologists and other experts to testify about counsel's mental state and the impact of his traumatic past. While these arguments elicited some sympathy, they were overshadowed by the brutality of his crimes and the profound loss experienced by the victims' families. The prosecution countered by emphasizing the premeditated nature of the murders. They argued that counsel had planned the robbery and carried out the killings not out of necessity, but as a deliberate act of violence. To underscore their point, they highlighted counsel's lack of remorse, citing his behavior during the manhunt and his calm demeanor following his arrest. The sentencing phase of the trial was particularly emotional. Family members of Donna Major and Katie Skeen delivered victim impact statements, describing the devastating void left by their loss. Donna's daughter spoke about her mother's unwavering love and how her absence had shattered their family. Katie's father, fighting back tears, recounted her dreams and aspirations, now forever unrealized. These statements moved many in the courtroom to tears and left an indelible impression on the jury. As the trial neared its conclusion, both sides made their final appeals. The prosecution urged the jury to consider the severity of the crime and the need for accountability. The defense, while acknowledging the tragedy, asked for mercy, arguing that life imprisonment would be a sufficient punishment. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Brandon Counsel would be sentenced to death. The decision brought a mix of relief and sorrow to the victims' families. While they were grateful that justice had been served, the sentence could never truly heal the wounds left by the loss of Donna and Katie. The trial of Brandon Counsel was more than just a legal proceeding. It was a powerful and painful reminder of the far-reaching impact of violence. For the families, the trial provided a measure of closure, though the pain of their loss would endure. For the community, it underscored the resilience and unity of those who came together in the face of tragedy. And for the nation, it raised complex questions about justice, punishment, and the human capacity for both cruelty and compassion. The sentencing of Brandon Counsel marked a pivotal moment in the case, but the emotional weight of the decision rippled far beyond the confines of the courtroom. When the jury delivered its verdict, death by lethal injection. It was a decision that carried both relief and sorrow for the families of Donna Major and Katie Skeen. For the victims' loved ones, the sentencing phase was an opportunity to voice their pain and to seek justice for lives cut tragically short. Yet the decision also reignited broader debates about the morality, efficacy, and fairness of the death penalty in America. The sentencing phase of counsel's trial was one of the most emotionally charged aspects of the entire case. Victim impact statements played a central role in this phase, giving family members a platform to share their grief and to illustrate the profound void left by Donna and Katie's deaths. Donna's daughter stood before the court, her voice trembling but resolute, as she described the heartbreak of losing her mother. She spoke about Donna's unwavering kindness, her love for her family, and the countless moments that would now remain unshared, weddings, graduations, and simple family dinners that would forever feel incomplete. Katie's father followed, painting a vivid picture of his daughter as a bright, ambitious young woman who brought joy to everyone she met. He described her dreams of building a career, starting a family, and making a difference in the world. Through tears, he expressed the deep pain of knowing that her potential had been stolen in an instant of senseless violence. Other family members and close friends also shared their memories, each testimony a poignant reminder of the human cost of counsel's actions. These statements were not only cathartic for the families, but also served as a powerful message to the jury about the irreparable harm caused by counsel's crimes. They highlighted the devastating ripple effect of violence, showing how one man's actions had shattered not just two lives but entire families and a community. The defense team, however, sought to mitigate the impact of these statements by presenting arguments that they hoped would persuade the jury to consider life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. They called on psychologists, social workers, and other experts to testify about counsel's troubled upbringing and mental health challenges. The defense painted a picture of a man shaped by a life of hardship, including a childhood marked by poverty, neglect, and exposure to violence. They argued that these factors had contributed to his decision-making and should be considered as mitigating circumstances. While some members of the jury appeared moved by these arguments, the prosecution countered with a compelling narrative of premeditation and cruelty. They reminded the court that counsel had made a series of calculated choices leading up to the crime. From entering the bank armed and ready to kill to executing Donna and Katie even after they complied with his demands, counsel's actions demonstrated a clear and chilling intent to harm. The prosecution emphasized that these murders were not crimes of passion or desperation, but deliberate acts of malice. As the jury deliberated, the community of Conway awaited their decision with bated breath. The sentencing phase had reignited debates about the death penalty within the town, with some arguing that it was a necessary measure of justice for such heinous crimes, while others questioned whether it was the right solution. For the families of Donna and Katie, however, the focus was not on the broader implications of the death penalty, but on seeking justice for their loved ones. When the jury announced their decision to sentence Brandon Counsell to death, it was met with a mix of emotions. For the victims' families, there was a sense of relief that the legal process had come to a conclusion and that the man responsible for their unimaginable loss would face the ultimate punishment. Yet there was also a recognition that no sentence, no matter how severe, could bring Donna and Katie back or fully heal the wounds left by their absence. The decision also sparked discussions within the broader community and beyond. Advocates of the death penalty saw the verdict as a reaffirmation of the justice system's ability to hold individuals accountable for the most egregious crimes. They argued that the sentence was not only a punishment but also a deterrent to others who might consider committing similar acts of violence. On the other hand, opponents of capital punishment questioned whether the death penalty truly served justice. They pointed to the moral and ethical complexities of taking a life, even in the name of justice, and highlighted the emotional toll that prolonged legal appeals and the anticipation of execution could have on both the victims' families and the convicted individual. For some, the case of Brandon Counsell reignited calls for a reevaluation of the death penalty in South Carolina and across the nation. As the legal proceedings concluded, Counsell was transferred to death row, where he would await the next stages of the judicial process, including mandatory appeals. For the families of Donna and Katie, the conclusion of the trial marked a turning point, though not an end to their grief. They faced the challenge of navigating life without their loved ones, finding ways to honor their memories and to heal from the trauma of their loss. The impact of the sentencing phase extended far beyond the courtroom. It became a moment of reflection for the Conway community, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of standing together in the face of tragedy. For the legal system, it was a case that underscored the weight of the decisions juries must make in death penalty cases and the profound consequences of those decisions. And for the nation, it was a story that raised enduring questions about crime, punishment, and the pursuit of justice in a complex and often imperfect world. In the wake of Brandon Counsel's sentencing, the case continued to evoke deep reflection and debate, both within the families of the victims and across the nation. The death penalty remains one of the most polarizing issues in America, and this case brought those tensions into sharp focus. While many viewed Counsel's sentence as a just response to his heinous crimes, others questioned the ethics and efficacy of capital punishment. The story did not end with the verdict. It sparked broader discussions about the nature of justice, the role of the legal system, and the lasting effects on the victims' families and the community at large. For Donna Majors and Katie Skeen's families, the conclusion of the trial was bittersweet. On one hand, the death penalty offered a sense of closure, a recognition of the magnitude of the loss they had suffered. The courtroom decision affirmed that Brandon Counsel's actions were among the gravest offenses, warranting the ultimate punishment under the law. But on the other hand, no sentence, no matter how severe, could truly fill the void left by their loved ones. The pain of their absence was an ongoing reality that no court ruling could alleviate. The families faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives in the shadow of such profound loss. Donna Major's children and grandchildren struggled to come to terms with a future without her steadfast love and support. Katie Skeen's parents and siblings found themselves grappling with dreams unfulfilled and milestones uncelebrated. In interviews and public statements, they spoke of the emotional toll the case had taken, from the initial shock of the murders to the long and grueling trial. Their journey toward healing was far from over, and their resilience became a testament to the strength of the human spirit. For the community of Conway, the case became a lasting symbol of both tragedy and unity. The senseless violence that claimed two beloved community members had initially shaken the town to its core. Yet in the aftermath, neighbors rallied around the grieving families, offering support through fundraisers, vigils, and heartfelt gestures of kindness. Memorials for Donna and Katie became places of reflection, where residents could honor their lives and reaffirm their commitment to standing together in times of crisis. The legal process did not end with the jury's decision, as capital punishment cases often involve lengthy appeals. Brandon Counsel's legal team began preparing for the next stages, exploring potential grounds for appeal that could delay the execution. These appeals are a standard part of the death penalty process, designed to ensure that every aspect of the case has been thoroughly examined and that the sentence is carried out fairly and lawfully. For the families of the victims, however, the appeals process represented a continuation of the emotional burden, forcing them to revisit the trauma and uncertainty of the case. The case also reignited broader debates about the death penalty in the United States. Advocates for capital punishment pointed to Counsel's crimes as a clear example of why the death penalty should remain an option for the most egregious offenses. They argued that his actions, premeditated, violent, and without provocation, warranted the ultimate punishment. Proponents highlighted the jury's decision as a reflection of society's moral outrage and a reaffirmation of the justice system's ability to deliver accountability. Opponents of the death penalty, however, raised serious concerns. They questioned whether taking a life, even one as guilty as Counsel's, truly served justice. Critics pointed to the high financial cost of death penalty cases, which often far exceed the cost of life imprisonment due to lengthy trials and appeals. They also highlighted the emotional toll on the victims' families, who must endure years of legal proceedings before an execution is carried out. For some, Counsel's case became a rallying point for calls to abolish the death penalty, arguing that life imprisonment without parole would have been a more humane and effective punishment. Beyond the legal and moral debates, the case also prompted discussions about the societal factors that contribute to violent crime. Brandon Council's background of poverty, instability, and mental health challenges became a focal point for those advocating for systemic reforms. While these factors did not excuse his actions, they underscored the importance of addressing root causes to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Advocates called for increased investment in mental health services, education, and social support systems to reduce the likelihood of individuals resorting to violence. Media coverage of the case played a significant role in shaping public perception. News outlets detailed every phase of the trial, from Council's arrest to his sentencing, often highlighting the emotional testimonies of the victims' families. While some coverage emphasized the brutality of the crime and the righteousness of the death penalty, others focused on the complexities of the legal system and the broader implications of capital punishment. The case became a flashpoint for ongoing discussions about justice, fairness, and the balance between retribution and rehabilitation. As the years passed, the memory of Donna Major and Katie Skeen endured as a source of inspiration for their loved ones and the community. Their families established scholarships, charitable events, and other initiatives in their honor, ensuring that their legacies would live on. These efforts not only celebrated their lives but also sought to bring positive change, channeling grief into actions that could benefit others. For Brandon Council, life on death row was a stark contrast to the life he had once known. Isolated and under constant surveillance, he faced the weight of his actions and the consequences they had brought. While his legal team continued to work on his behalf, the shadow of his crimes remained inescapable. In the end, the case of Brandon Council was not just a story of crime and punishment, but a reflection of the complexities of justice. It illuminated the profound impact of violence on individuals, families, and communities while raising enduring questions about how society responds to such acts. For the families of Donna and Katie, the pain of loss remained, tempered only by the strength of their memories and the love they shared. And for the nation, the case served as a reminder of the ongoing struggle to balance justice, compassion, and accountability in an imperfect world.